Man, I'm so excited for this series called Miracle Releaser. Someone say Miracle Releaser. And so this is the final message in this series. And I've been preparing for this. I've wanted to preach this message for a while, and I'm very, very excited to do it. And so if I would ask you today is I want to take you on a journey. I want to tell you this story about Jesus, and I believe it's going to really touch your life and inspire you and empower you. And so the title of my message is called Looking for Jesus. Who's ever had like a moment in life where they were going through something and they started looking for Jesus? We've all had it. It's just kind of an interesting thing. Me and my wife have been working on our health. I think that comes with the age of like being in your 30s. I got my hair cut the other day, and I was talking to the guy who cuts my hair. I've known him for 10 years. And we spent 30 minutes talking about wellness. Like, every conversation was, what spa do you go to? Who do you follow for electrolytes? Like, it's so funny. And I said, you know how funny this is? We had the exact same conversation at 25, but it was not about wellness. It was about all these other 25-year-old things. And so we've been working on our health, and so we've been doing these shakes for lunches, and we have this like little shake machine, and it worked for a season, but when you have two people on a small NutriBullet, sometimes you're making shakes by faith. Like, you don't even know if that thing's going to make it to the end of the shake process. And so we bought we decided to buy a blender, and we went to Williams-Sonoma. Someone say blessed. Someone say blessed. I took my new wife to Williams-Sonoma. Don't get mad at me. I just a move men should do, right? So we went and we were looking at all these blenders, and so we found the blender that we wanted, and we ordered it because they did not have it in the store, and so they gave us a time and a date, and so we waited. Someone say waited. And so it was supposed to come on Friday, and if you ever ordered anything now, I feel like technology has really changed the ordering process. It used to be where when you order something, they would say, it's going to come on Friday, who knows when. Now they send you a link, and you can like follow the UPS driver, right? Have you seen this? They give you like the stops, like what he's doing. There's like a camera in his little UPS car. Like, it's really intense. And so I all day I was kind of following the process, and I noticed that every like hour I just was looking for the guy. You know, and I would just take my, by me looking is somehow going to make this guy move faster. Like, who's ever gone through that? And so that was me. And so I must have checked my phone like 7 times looking for this mailman for this doggone blender that we were going to get. And it was such a kind of surreal experience because I spent the whole day with a part of my mental bandwidth focusing on looking for this guy. And so it's kind of funny because there's a story in the Bible, Mark 2, and this is a story I want to talk about, and we've all heard this story before, but there's a lot of things you probably have not heard about the story. It's when Jesus heals the paralyzed man. And so the story kind of goes like this, is that people were looking for Jesus. So Jesus had been out traveling, and he had been healing people and teaching. And so the story goes that he comes back to Capernaum, and he comes back to his house. And so, because he's living in Capernaum at this time, scholars believe. And so while he's there, people hear that he's back at home. And so all these people from everywhere in the city come to Jesus' house. Like, he's like a rock star, and they surround the house. And so many people don't know this, but the story about the man who gets put through the roof, scholars believe that was actually Jesus' roof. Because we all think that it was somebody else's home. But Jesus was traveling and speaking, and then he came home, and word had got out about what was happening to him. And so he was in his house, and there were so many people trying to get in the house that's how the story happened, where 4 of his neighbors just basically broke the guy's room and put a guy in the middle of it. How funny is that? That's Jesus's room that he had to deal with. And so I want to read the story. It's an amazing story. A few days later, when Jesus entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. And he preached the word to them. Some men came bringing to him a paralyzed man carried by 4 of them. So you could imagine the scene. Since they could not get to Jesus because the crowd was so packed in front of his house, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and lowered the mat and the man who was lying on it. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." So there's a few things in this story that I think will bless you today. The first thing is that we talked about last week, that every healing Jesus performed is intentional. The thing about miracles is that sometimes God will give you a miracle to get you out of something, but most of the time, God will actually perform a miracle in your life to get you into something. And so we often think about miracles. And so again, we talked about this last week, and we looked at how Jesus healed the leper in the story before this one. And it's a very, very similar story, is that there's a man who is lame, and he hears about Jesus, and he comes to Jesus, and then Jesus heals him. But the thing about Jesus is that when he heals you, he will not just heal you in one area of your life. He also forgives the man. Forgiveness. You know, the thing about forgiveness is what I call total healing. Because he not only sees the man who is sick and who's in pain and who's ailing, Jesus heals the sickness, but then he also forgives him. Translation, he reconciles him. He brings him in. We talked about this a little bit last week, and it's true in this story, is that forgiveness was a really big deal in first century culture. And so what would happen is Jews were called to be people of God. But in their life, they would often not always do everything they could do. I call that kind of boxing below your station. Has anyone ever had a moment in life where you've boxed a little bit below your station? Like you know what's right, and then you don't do what's right, and then it produces an outcome you wish it didn't produce. And so we all have those moments, and so the way that the Israelites would handle that is they would take a sacrifice for their sins, and they would go to the temple, and they would present that sacrifice. And they would do that at the temple for a couple reasons. The first reason is because the temple was the place where God lived. It was the place where the holies of holies is. So if you wanted to make something right, you go to God. And so in that time, going to God meant going to the temple. And then you would bring your sacrifice, and you would go through a ritual of forgiveness, and then the priests, on behalf of God, would recognize your penance. They would see that you took ownership and responsibility for your shortcomings. And then you would receive forgiveness. And so it was a practice of making things right, of letting things go, of starting anew. That when you went through things in your life that shamed you or held you back or left you in a discount version of yourself, the process of forgiveness was actually an experience of transformation. Because it allowed you to restart, to come to terms with, to take ownership with, to grow. Someone say grow. It's like in therapy today, the first thing they tell you when you go to a great therapist is they'll call you on your stuff. And then you got to take ownership of the stuff. Forgiveness is kind of the same. And so when Jesus sees this man, he not only wants to heal him physically, but he's going to heal him to get him into something. He wants to give this man his life back. Not just his physical life, but his whole life. Translation, he wants the man to experience resurrection. And so that's why the man doesn't even ask, but he heals him, and then he tells the man, I forgive you of your sins. I forgive you. I redeem you. I'm going to be the person who vindicates you. You don't even know it yet, but I'm going to be the person that vindicates you. And that's how it is with Jesus. I think so often in life we go to God with something that we need, or we're having a certain experience, or we're looking for Jesus because we're going through something. And what will always happen is when Jesus steps in the room, he always does way more than what you think you need. Because he is your restorer. He is your redeemer. He is the one who forgives sins. He is the one who restarts, resets, puts back together, decides what happens. And so he's making a radical claim to people in the room. I'm not just one of those people that just performs healing miracles. I am God. I am the kingdom. I am the authority. And when I come into your life, I'm going to reset, restore, redeem, recreate. I'm going to bring new life into every part of your life. And so you see this, that God heals you. When he heals us, he doesn't just heal us to get us out of something, but he always heals us to get us into something. And when Jesus does this, it doesn't really play well with a certain level of the crowd. And this is verse 6. It says, now some teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Isn't it interesting? A couple of things. I love this, that the teachers of the law, they showed up at his house. Isn't that funny how that works? Like, you're like, have you ever seen someone or been a person, you're starting to get your life together? You're starting to get over that guy, right? You're starting to get back on your feet. You're starting to discover who you are. Maybe you went through a discount season, right? And you lost that sense of confidence. But then you're going through a restoration process, and you're just putting yourself back together. And there's always some knucklehead that just decides to show up and start questioning what authority that you have in your life to put yourself together. If I'm not preaching to somebody, come on, church. We all have had people that just like to show up and give opinions. Isn't that true? Callie and I, my wife, we just moved into a new apartment. When we got to the apartment, we knew, like, the friend list of friends that would probably have an opinion about the apartment. We're like, oh, we can't bring this person here. They're going to say something. They're not going to appreciate this. I think they might be avoiding this place. Like, there's always somebody that will come into your situation and begin to kind of condemn you, put you down, right? Drag you back, make you question you. One of the most beautiful things about this story in Mark, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a professional writer, so I pay attention to like all the funny things that happen in Scripture. So one of the cool things is that this verse is actually a meta narrative of the whole Gospel of Mark. Because the whole gospel is Jesus teaching, performing miracles, condemnation, as in they condemn him, and then he's vindicated, which is the resurrection. And so Mark is foreshadowing. He's foreshadowing what's going to happen in the rest. And so this scripture is like a mini story of the whole story. And so you see all the pieces at play, and you get a sense as a reader what's going to happen. Jesus is healing people, right? He's teaching about the kingdom. People are getting so blessed that they're coming out of the woodwork. They're breaking into the guy's home. They're breaking through walls and roofs to try to get to him. And there's always somebody who shows up and says, "Who is he?" But what's great about this story is that Jesus is going to get vindicated. And that's what happens with us, is that when the enemy shows up and begins to push us down, try to rob us of the very thing God is doing in our lives, what happens is vindication always follows. Translation, don't listen to the enemy. A few years ago, I remember we were going through something, and I had a guy who kind of stepped up and said some real mean things about me, and I told my family about it. He just didn't like me, because sometimes in life, have you ever had someone don't like you? That happens, right? This guy didn't like me. I don't know what to tell you. And so I remember I told my mom, I said, man, I go, this is really getting to me. I know it shouldn't, but it's really getting to me. And she goes, honey, it's designed to make you feel small. It's designed. The reason why you feel small is because how he kind of came at you was designed to make you feel small. But the truth is, you're not small. So take it, feel it, and then give it over. Because there will always be vindication. Someone say that, vindication. In the same way that Jesus is vindicated in this story, we are vindicated. And so I think this is so beautiful that point number 3, immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking of in their hearts. And he said to them, why are you thinking these things? And I love this. Jesus is so intuitive. He's spotting it in them. He goes, which is easier, to say that this paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk out? I love this. He's challenging them a little bit. If you can't hear it in this verse, Jesus is going a little gangster. He's basically saying, hey, buddy, I just prayed for the guy, and the guy can walk. What do you think is easier, getting him to walk, healing him to get him out of something, or healing him to get into something? And so you see this. There's a directness in Jesus' voice. He says, your sins are forgiven. He goes, but I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. There's an amazing thing about this verse is this is the first time in Mark where Jesus establishes his full authority as the Messiah. He is showing people that he's not like the other messiahs. So the word Messiah basically in that culture was used a lot to describe somebody who was sent by God. And so there were many messiahs running around claiming to be God's messenger. It's kind of like today, right? I feel like everybody's claiming to be the guy, right? Or to be the girl, or to have the message, or to be able to be the ultimate, right? In the same way that you have a lot of leaders who are kind of building big empires. That was happening in the first century. There were a lot of people who were claiming that they had the corner market on what God wanted to do. And so messiahs were kind of big and they're at this time. And so one of the first things you see with Jesus is that he very clearly says he's the Messiah, but he begins to establish himself as the Messiah. He's not just somebody with great wisdom. He is the Son of the living God that his Father has sent to restore and redeem and renew everything. And so the Son of Man is an interesting reference. It actually references Daniel 7. And so Daniel was a prophet, and he prophesied this years ago before Jesus. And I want to read this because this was a real famous prophecy in Israel, and everyone kind of knew this. And so this was Daniel's prophecy, and he says, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power, and all nations and people of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will never pass away, and his kingdom is the one that will never be destroyed. So when Jesus says, I am the Son of Man, what he is saying is he's saying, I am the one that my Father has sent with power and glory and his presence and authority into your life. I am the promise that God has promised over you. I am here to fulfill that promise. Therefore, I'm not just going to heal this man who could not walk. I'm also going to forgive him. Because he is the living temple on earth. It's a beautiful thing to see Jesus with all power, all love, all authority, all presence step into your life, see you fully as who you are, and say, you know what? I'm not just going to put you back together, but I'm going to put you back together in such a way where you're going to have a new life. Amen? And so the point number 4, who has 10 minutes left in them? Yeah. And this is the next. So he said to the man, I tell you, get up and take your mat and go home. He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. One of the things that is amazing about Mark is that he's such a brilliant writer. He's always foreshadowing. And so, as I kind of mentioned earlier, is that this story is a foreshadow of the whole gospel. The ending of the story is also a foreshadow of Jesus' ending and our ending. Because when the man gets up from the mat, he is resurrected, in a sense. And so what's amazing about this is Mark is foreshadowing to the reader what is going to happen to Jesus. That Jesus, like this man, is also going to be condemned, but he's going to be vindicated. That what's going to happen at the end of this story is resurrection. So in the same way that this man gets off the mat, Jesus gets off the mat. And Mark doesn't want to stop there. There's also an implicit underlining tone that it's not only that Jesus is going to get off the mat in resurrection, anyone who follows Jesus and will be a part of Jesus is going to share in that resurrection. And so you see this amazing image where Jesus is the healer and he is the resurrector, and then he's going to go through a trial, and then his Father is going to heal and resurrect him. And then anyone who is a follower of Jesus is going to experience the exact same thing. So this story, in many ways, is like a spoiler trailer to what happens as people of faith. Yeah. I'm one of those people, I like movies a lot, and one of the things that I like to do is I like to watch trailers for films, and sometimes I'll even watch clips of the film before I see the movie, which is not a great habit to do. I understand this. I have thought about this ad nauseum about myself, trying to figure out a better strategy, but I can't help it. But it's like the thing about the gospel is that when you are a Christian, it's like knowing the end of your story before the movie's finished. Does that make sense? And so when we read the gospel, what we're looking at is we're looking at a trailer, we're looking at a spoiler about what happens in our story. So we read the story about the man and Jesus. How does it end for this man? This man spent his whole life on a mat. He deals with alienness. To be on a mat today, not being able to walk, super hard. To do that in the first century, that's got to be crazy hard. In many ways, that man is us. Regardless of the person in this room, I believe that there's an area of each of our lives where we feel like we're stuck on a mat. There's at least one area. You'd be killing it in business, but maybe it's your spiritual life. Maybe you're great in your spiritual life, but you feel stuck on a mat in your personal life. Maybe your personal life is great, but maybe it's a relationship issue. And so in every area of our life, there is a place where we feel stuck. And so in that moment, we often are looking for Jesus. And what this story does is it shows us what happens when we say yes to our faith. What I love about this story is that the man who was on that mat chose to look for Jesus. He got his friends together. They found Jesus. I feel like in all of our lives, we're looking for Jesus. Even when we have faith, there's still moments where we feel lonely. Maybe we're here today and we haven't come to a greater faith. We're looking for Jesus. We're looking for Jesus in our finances. We're looking for Jesus in our personal lives. We're looking for Jesus in our family life. We're looking for Jesus in our confidence area. I just talked to a friend of mine the other day who's dealing with some tough stuff, and he's a pastor to pastor. And I said, maybe this is a season for you to do some deep work and stretch and begin to look for God in a new way. I know you're a pastor, but maybe this is a moment where you can find a deeper revelation of Jesus' goodness. And so the thing about life is that often when we're in our most vulnerable, we're our most scared. Because things are most vulnerable. It's most rickety. And so it's the hardest to ask for Jesus. It's the hardest to ask if God is really there when you can't make it without him. And so this is that man's story, and what we see is when the man decides to ask for Jesus, it's like knowing the end of the movie before you see it. When you have the courage to take that part of your life where you're stuck and you give it to God, you're going to find God. But you won't just find a God who will just heal you and leave you. You're going to find a God who will restore you, who will forgive you, who will vindicate you, who will be your redeemer, who will be your champion, who won't just heal that part of your life that you need, but he will flood your whole life with his love and justice and mercy and goodness and truth and glory. If that doesn't get a clap, church, I don't know what. You guys want to come up? My final point is this: the gift of Jesus. I think it's so beautiful that we are given the opportunity as people that we can step into God whenever we want to. That's really kind of been the point of this series, Miracle Mentality. There's a quote I love by a really famous Christian author named Jürgen Moltmann, and they asked him about miracles, and they asked him about the supernatural. They asked him if he believed in miracles, because he's this famous Christian writer. And he said, I kind of do, but I kind of don't. And that struck him. What do you mean? He goes, for a Christian, what's unnatural is the dehumanization. What's unnatural is the brokenness. That's what's unnatural. That things are broken, people are wounded, people are tough in tough situations. It's unnatural for people to be broken. For Christians, healings are not supernatural. They're natural. In fact, they're the only natural thing that happens in a world that has unnaturally been broken. And I love this because what Jesus is trying to do and what we've been discussing through this series is that when you said yes to Jesus, your mind gets renewed in light of the cross. Does that make sense? You lived a whole life, and that life has taught you lessons about how things work, the operating procedure of life. But then when you come to know the cross, the rules change in light of the Jesus that walks into your life. And so the new rules are that God is a living God. He has all authority. And despite whatever condemnation you've gone through, despite whatever situation you might be stuck in, despite how you might personally feel about yourself or what others might have done, when Jesus steps into your life, He is your vindicator. Miracle mentality. You know, I worked on that book with my Uncle Tim, and the book is all about setting the conditions for miraculous life. And so I think the point of this whole series has been that Jesus sets the conditions for the miraculous in our lives. And when we have the faith to live for Him and to say, Jesus, I'm opening my heart to you. I'm committing to you. I'm putting you first in my life. You will be my cornerstone. You are going to be my forgiveness. You are going to be my vindicator. You are going to be the person I believe about myself. I'm going to stop believing what other people have told me, and I'm going to start believing what you have told me. I'm going to stop believing what other people have said my value is, and I'm going to start living like you're saying my value is. I'm going to stretch myself and put myself out there by faith. What you will find when you do that is the same thing that the leper found, that the man who was paralyzed found. You will find a loving God who is your Redeemer, Restorer, and your Vindicator. And His word is all the word. I'm done preaching. Let's give the Lord a clap. If everyone could stand with me. Yeah. I want to pray real quick, and then if you guys could do, what was that last song you did?
Make a way.
Ooh, make a way. Just pray with me. I'm going to ask everyone in this room, there's probably an area of your life where you feel like you're stuck on the mat. You feel stuck, paralyzed, unable to move through it, not really knowing what to do. And it's okay not to know what to do. We all have moments. And so I'm going to challenge you today by faith. What we're going to do this as a body of Christ. We're going to take all the areas that we feel stuck, and we're going to give them to God collectively. Someone say together. And we're going to do this as an act of faith, believing that God is our vindicator, that Jesus is our restorer. And so I'm going to pray. If you would pray with me, bow your heads and close your eyes. Father, we just come before you collectively. Every person has something in their heart that they want to give to you. Every person feels like there's a place they might be stuck in their hearts. Father, today we give those areas up to you. We give them to you. By faith, we open our hearts to you, and we look for you, Jesus. We look because we know you are a restorer, you are a healer, you are a vindicator. And Father, we pray that you will take anything and all that we give you, and you will make it new. You will breathe new life into our situation. And for those of you who've never become a Christian or had become a Christian but walked away and you're saying, Pastor Stefan, I want Jesus to be my vindicator. Just join us in this prayer if everyone could pray with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for creating me and giving me life. Thank you for sending your Son to change my life. Jesus, be Jesus in my life in a new and special way. I say yes to your invitation to walk a resurrected life. In Jesus' name. Let's give the Lord a clap this morning.